free at 888-SHEER-51. That's 888-743-3751. A better life begins with Sheer Recovery. Call 888-743-3751 or go online at www.sheerrecovery.com.
For more local radio every day, tune into KCAA Loma Linda.
Welcome to U-Turn Radio. Here at U-Turn Radio, we believe in big-hearted communities and small government. Join your hosts, Nadia Renner, Tom Murphy, and Eric Steinman, as we work to put local governments on a diet and champion the charities that support your community. So come on, join us and let's turn it around.
Welcome to U-Turn Radio. Happy Sunday. I feel like everything's going to go back to regular programming. World Cup is done. Today was the last game. France won 4-2 against Croatia.
Yeah, I don't really track World Cup. So.
Sorry. I just figured we'll have more listeners now. Back to regular programming. We have a great show today. If this is your first time tuning in, we are U-Turn Radio, where we believe in small governments and big-hearted communities.
Yeah, big-hearted communities, and we really appreciate that side of our mission, although it's not the one we talk about the most. We actually have an opportunity to talk about that right out of the gate today.
Absolutely. And today we have a great show. The title of today's show is Aiming to Miss. What does that mean? And what does that mean, Tom?
Well, what we wanted to describe today is if anybody is involved in politics or leadership within the Inland Empire, there's something that they need to aim to miss. And what they need to aim to miss is the perception that they are paying to play or that they have a conflict of interest. So that's essentially the point for our show today.
Absolutely. And just so you know as well, here on U-Turn Radio, if you call in and tell us about your favorite charity, you get rewarded, and you can win anywhere from hundreds of thousands of dollars here for your local charity. You can call in at 909-792-5222. That's 909-792-5222. And speaking of charities, we have a charity today that we're going to be talking about, and we have Pat Bell on the phone from House of Ruth. Welcome to U-Turn, Pat.
Thank you, Nadia.
So tell us a little bit about your charity, House of Ruth.
Well, House of Ruth is a very important charity serving the Inland Empire. We provide domestic violence services to women, men, and their children, and, really just provide the opportunity for people to get safe. We have a crisis shelter. We've got a 24-hour hotline, and we have many people that come to see us on an outreach basis and come in just for the support of case management or counseling. We feel that every home should really be a safe home, and we're dedicated to the safety and well-being of all the people that live in the Inland Empire. So anyone out there that is, having some troubles in the home, possibly suffering from domestic abuse, I would encourage them to call our hotline and get some help.
Do you want to provide that phone number?
Yeah, our hotline is 877-988-5559. And you can also find a lot of information, including our hotline and a Donate Now button on our website, houseofruthinc.org.
Pat, I was also reading that one out of four in a household deals with domestic violence. Is that right?
Yeah, the statistics are really alarming, and because of the fear that exists around reporting domestic violence, you don't often get a lot of people that come forward. That statistically, nationwide, 1 in 4 women have experienced abuse. 1 in 7 men have been a victim of abuse in their home, and 1 in 3 teens have experienced abuse in their dating relationship. We do a lot of work in the high schools and college campuses to kind of get ahead of it from a preventative standpoint by educating on what healthy relationships look like. So we spend a lot of time with the younger generations just so they don't grow up and repeat some of these cycles that they've seen that they may have, witnessed their mom and dad doing.
Right. You said 1 out of 7 men deal with it, so more than women.
No. 1 out of 7 men actually report, and men.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, men don't report as often, just because of the stigma of, coming forward and saying that, they're being abused. But we actually offer services to men. We have men that come into our shelter and receive counseling from us and the support that they need. So, I've worked in the business, and I've seen so many people that I can say with utmost confidence domestic violence happens to anybody. It doesn't have any barriers at all socioeconomic categories. It can happen to anyone.
That's amazing. Let's go ahead and spin the wheel, or do you have another question, Tom?
Talk to us, Pat, if you will, talk to us a little bit about where your funding comes from and just number of peoples that you serve, number of persons that you serve.
Yeah, of course. Our funding, we receive a lot of funding from government, of course, federal, state, LA County, and San Bernardino County, as well as cities. We have numerous cities that, we provide services to their residents that also offer us funding. We receive funding from private foundations as well as our wonderful, wonderful individual donors that are committed to our mission and donate, year after year. And, together with that pretty wide network of funding sources, we're able to sustain what we do. And in terms of the numbers of people that we serve, on average, in our emergency shelter, we serve about 300 people a year. And in our outreach walk-in center, we serve approximately 1,500 people that come in. These are the folks that may not need shelter, but they need the support. So they just come in and receive a support group or a counseling session or anything like that. And then out in the community, we do a really heavy outreach into the community because, like I said earlier, we believe that to eradicate violence, we have to get ahead of it with prevention. So we go out into the schools, out into community businesses, giving presentations, talking to thousands of people. And on average, we will hit about 12,000 people a year just with preventative education.
Okay, that's great. And Pat, one of the things that we do here at U-Turn Radio is we believe in big-hearted communities and small governments, and we really like to support, if you will, the big-hearted community side of it. So anybody that dials in, we do a for charity thing. So since you called, we're going to do that for House of Ruth today. And
that's great. I'm very excited.
I have this little spin thing here.
Awesome.
I don't know if you can hear that, but it is actually spinning.
Yay!
And,
go big.
It looks like $1,300.
Nice.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you so
Awesome.
much, you guys. That's awesome.
Pat, and I would love to volunteer, so I'll get in contact with you, and maybe I can come out and volunteer this upcoming week.
Nadia, that's great. We'd love to meet you and show you around and get, talk to you more about it. Thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for calling us.
Thanks
Take
a lot.
care. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
So just like Pat from House of Ruth, you can also call, and you don't have to work for a charity. It could just be your favorite charity, and call in 909-792-5222. That's 909-792-5222.
Hey, Nadia, this is Eric. Hey, I watch the World Cup.
Do you?
Yeah.
Is that why you're not here, Eric?
But I can't help having a great idea. I think they should take this up with the United Nations that in the future they should fight all wars with World Cup soccer players. Because
because what?
Because everyone would get all their satisfaction of inflicting pain on everybody else, but everyone would at the end of the day just get up and walk away and get back and play.
Hey, that idea has some merit.
That's a good idea, I guess. We got to develop that. I think you might be onto something, Eric.
All right. That's what we're trying to do, is come up with good ideas.
Hey, also in the studio with us today is Sean Wade, Mr. Sean Wade. He's an in-house attorney for the Red Brennan Group, which is U-Turn Radio's underwriter, and he's going to help us out today. We've got a couple legal concepts that it's good to have an attorney explain rather than me muddle through it. So
nothing like putting him on the spot with no time to prepare there.
Oh, I'm glad to be
No,
here.
we gave him like 10 minutes of prep time, man. He's
Okay.
he's all over it. So,
Welcome, Sean, to U-Turn Radio.
Thanks for having
yeah,
me.
thanks for being on. We appreciate it. So, so back to the point of the show.
Absolutely. We're getting into our topic today, which is aiming to miss.
Yeah, there you go.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what that means is the perception of pay to play or conflict of interest. That even the perception. Now, basically, in general, whatever election laws or laws that govern the interaction between government and the private sector are going to be rooted on the idea of it's illegal to pay to play. To actually do what they call a quid pro quo relationship or interaction. And Sean is going to explain for us what exactly quid pro quo interaction means.
Sure. So, quid pro quo is a Latin term meaning something for something, but a lot of people kind of associate it with this pay-to-play colloquial phrase that's come out recently, especially after the most recent presidential election. But so the idea of pay-to-play is kind of like, you know, when parties form a contract, they have mutual consideration. One side has something the other side wants, and vice versa. But in terms of pay-to-play, it's kind of like when two parties that weren't necessarily bargaining at arm's length come together. So two parties that kind of are making a deal that might not be negotiated on the sharpest terms because they're trying to get something that they might not, in a normal business setting, be able to get out of one another. So
Okay. So you kind of, to put it in my language, scratch your back, or you scratch my
Right.
back, I'll scratch your.
yeah, we'll do each other a favor
Right.
that might not otherwise exist in a normal setting.
Okay, and like we said, that's in general, the laws would say that actually is illegal.
Right, because we want parties to negotiate, you know, at what they say at arm's length. Like, we want parties to actually come to the table and strike the best deal for each other, not really create deals that shouldn't exist, for lack of a better term.
Okay, all right, and so that's what we kind of wanted to lay that groundwork to go ahead and work through an example that has gone on, as we said, in the Inland Empire, particularly San Bernardino County, for quite some time, and that's the Colonies case. And that, first of all, you know, the trial in this thing came out not guilty. So we are not suggesting at all that the defendants in that trial are guilty of anything. But what we're calling
other than bad judgment, Tom?
we're gonna
You're
gonna
gonna suggest they might be guilty of that?
What we're calling interested parties, so developers, public unions, anybody that interacts with the government and is going to receive some sort of gain, particularly financial gain out of it, we're calling them to certainly avoid quid pro quo, pay for play, which the folks in the Colonies case did, according to the verdict. But we're calling for a step higher than that. We're calling for a step where you avoid even the perception. And as we kind of walk through published reports on this case, there's at least 4 inflection areas where if you had looked at it and said, does this create a perception?
Right.
Then I'm not going to do it. It would have kept them out of a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing would have gone down differently, I think.
So then why don't we do this? Before we go into the actual case and break it down and explain the two parties, let's take a break, and then we'll come back and get into it when we come back.
Okay.
You're listening to U-Turn Radio.
Sounds great.
We'll be right back to U-Turn after this commercial break. Don't go away.
How would you feel if you had to make a choice between buying food or spending your fixed income on life-saving medicine? No one should make that trade-off, but many low-income seniors are forced into difficult decisions like this every day. Smiles for Seniors Foundation provides energy assistance and safety net services to struggling low-income seniors in the Inland Empire. They provide one-time assistance to seniors to meet specific financial needs. They've helped with food, housing, utility payments, minor home and auto repairs, along with life-saving prescriptions or medical equipment. A nonprofit foundation funded entirely by donations from local organizations. Smiles for Seniors receives no funding from the state or federal government. They are funded by local businesses and individuals like you with big hearts and willing wallets. You can find more information or to donate to Smile for Seniors at 909-790-6671. That's 909-790-6671, or visit smilesforseniors.foundation.org. That's smilesforseniors.foundation.org.
Tom, Nadia, and Eric are back with more only on the U-Turn Radio Show right here on KCAA.
During the commercial break, you heard Better Than Not. That's a song by Blue Skies and Red Wine. You can find all of their music on mountainmusic.net. And something really neat about it is that they are actually local artists. They are from Wrightwood, right?
Yeah.
Not too far from us.
Yep. Yeah.
So you can definitely listen to. Were you going to say something else?
No, yeah.
They have great music. So yeah, I actually just learned a little bit about them. They went to Tennessee to create this album, and it's very neat to see people really just go after their dreams. They're songwriters, so they wrote these songs and then went to Tennessee to create this album, and that's what you're going to be listening to if you go to mountainmusic.net. And like I said, they're right from Wrightwood. Right before the commercial break, we were talking about, or the title of our show today is Aiming to Miss. What does that mean?
Yeah, and what we're propounding is that folks that interact with the government, particularly if they're gaining something from it financially, is that not only would they avoid the illegal action of pay to play, but they would avoid the perception of pay to play. And in so doing, create some confidence in terms of governing in particularly San Bernardino County, because this is a San Bernardino County story.
Right.
So that's kind of the idea.
Okay.
Okay.
So the first mistake that we were going to get into before the commercial break was.
Yeah, let me give you some background and kind of show you where. So we're going to kind of talk through the whole colonies case if we can get through it, and we're going to hit 4 areas. And these are, as I said, these are all published reports. And as I read through them, I was like, that's an area where if they had said, let's avoid the perception of pay to play, that they would have saved themselves some pain. So the story, it actually starts in the mid-1930s. there's this whopping big flood, 50-year flood in the whole LA basin area, and like 5,600 businesses and homes are destroyed, 110 people die or something like that.
Wow.
And as a result of that, or in consequence of the flooding, San Bernardino County puts an easement, a flood control easement, on a piece of property that eventually becomes the Colonies development. And Sean, explain to us what an easement is from a legal perspective.
So an easement is essentially you can own title to property and be like the legal owner, but someone else could also have an interest in the property that is itself a legal interest called an easement. And an easement is just, there's lots of different kinds of easements. You're talking about flood control easements. You often see easements in the terms of like, you might buy a house and the house is landlocked and it's not near a road, so you've got to drive across your neighbor's driveway to get onto the freeway. So a lot of times when you purchase that home, it might come with an easement. Someone else has to use the road. And so that easement creates a legal right, and that legal right can be enforced in court. Easements can be created in a lot of ways. Sometimes they're formally created through a contract when you're negotiating the sale of the property. Sometimes they're created informally because your neighbor just drives on your driveway to get to the freeway for 25 years, and then the courts will say that if it's ever taken to court, he's created an easement. So with the flood control easement, it's essentially the legal right for someone to either enter the property to drain or for someone to drain the resulting floodwaters onto your property. So that, like I said, that legal right can be enforced in court. So
okay. Yeah, and that's kind of, we now jump from the mid-1930s when the county put an easement on Cucamonga Canyon where it flushes out, if you will, downstream of that.
Right.
There's easements there that basically say, actually they say, let's just leave this open land because it's going to flood, just like it did in the mid-1930s. Well, you jump forward to 1997, and Colonies Developers, which is a consortium of 19 developers headed up by Jeff Brum, they purchase this area. It's 434 acres. They buy it from the water company, and they pay $17 million. And they're going to develop it, right? So that's so far so good. Maybe a little bit risky because there had been 3 other development companies that kind of looked at it and said, nah, the cost for handling that potential flood water, that's just going to be too high.
Because it would be like 17 million on top of whatever could happen.
Well, yeah,
kind of.
Well, 17 million was just to buy the property.
To buy the property.
Okay, so now you got this piece of blank land. They have to develop it. One of the things that they're going to have to consider in the development is, every 50, 100 years, there's going to be a whopping big flood, and we got to prepare for that because you don't want to be, we don't want all these people that we bought the houses for to be knee deep or chest deep in water 20 years down the road. So how to handle that? Well, so what they do is initially they make an agreement that they're going to build kind of a small flood control pond. It's like 5 acres, and they they agree with the county that basically going forward we're going to figure this out. Okay. And here's the first inflection point. They're dealing with the city of Upland to try to get their plans through. And what they do is they pay to bring in extra support. If I understand the published reports correctly, they pay to bring in extra support so that the city of Upland can kind of get this through their process. The planning development type process. So that, in my opinion, and I don't know, what do you think? Does that sound, as somebody on the street, how would you respond to that?
That kind of sounds fair so far. If they're going to provide or help me get it quicker or try to develop something or a plan, I think that kind of
works. Okay. But let's imagine you're John Q. Public in line at
the let me just ask you, Nadia, would you still feel that way if you bought a house there and then some years later a big flood came through and wiped out your house And then you found out that the people that approved the plan for that house, which everyone knew was in a floodplain, were actually being paid by the people who were developing that house and getting money from you selling it to you, and maybe not, looking at everything from a real arm's length vantage point as to have they handled the development
That
problems.
was a much better question.
Okay, now if I am aware of that, then that I would definitely have an issue, because at first I'm thinking if I didn't know that, I mean, I'm thinking like, oh, they're trying to help me out. So, but now if I know this information, absolutely, I would be like, wait, but you knew this.
Yeah.
So how can you create, but sell me this home, you know?
Right. And to be clear, we're certainly not accusing anybody. What we're saying is that is an inflection point where if they were approaching this with, hey, we want to avoid even the perception that because we're financing this, we're paying for this, that we're getting kind of a deal from the city of Upland. We'll be able to process our stuff, get it done. If they had said, nope, we're not going to do that, we're going to get in line like everybody else, and we're just going to wait it out, they would have avoided that issue.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, but I would have definitely have an issue if I knew that they already knew about it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's clear everybody knew about it, but that the people who want to build a house and sell it to you are actually paying for the people to approve those plans. When part of it, and there's places you build houses that don't have a whole lot of risk to them, and there's places that have a lot of risk, like being up against a forest where there's fire danger, and being in a flood control area where there's the likelihood or certainly the possibility of a flood. So, generally you want somebody to be looking at that arm's length and saying, yeah, everything's in place. But if the people who are trying to get it through are paying for the people to get it approved, then they're both likely to get hauled into court later on, and
right.
if there's a problem, and that's one reason it's not a good idea. And the other reason is, you just don't have that arm's length transaction that maybe Sean alluded to.
Now let me ask, like when you say like they're paying to get these approvals and stuff, what type of money are we talking about? Like, is it like a monthly? Is it a yearly fee? And like, is it thousands? Is it in the million? Like what?
I don't know. And in the published reports, they didn't have a financial value. They just mentioned that the developer funded support. So probably hired some planners and some designers, reviewers to go ahead and help the city of Upland kind of move this stuff through so they can get working. I'm not certain about that.
Yeah, in situations like this, even if there is nothing fishy going on in the background, a lot of times perception is reality.
Right.
So when you see that, you have questions. And when your questions aren't answered, you have more questions. So eventually it just, if there's smoke, there's fire, they say sometimes. So,
yeah, and that's that perception that we're trying to. So to push the story forward, and I'm gonna kind of brush over some of this detail, but between 90.
Well, one thing you've already brushed over, I think, is that these people put $17 million into it, and then they sold a path or an easement or a path across their property for the 210 freeway to be put in, correct?
Yeah, that's actually a good segue into kind of the next comment is, over the next couple of years, 2009, a couple things happened. First of all, the city of Upland's having a hard time, or they have some issues with flood control of their own. So they end up asking the county flood control district to help them construct a solution, which turns into the 20th Street storm drain. So what they do with this drain is they bring it down to the 210 freeway, which is being constructed at the moment, and they agree with Caltrans, hey, can we just kind of route this along the 210, and we're going to route it until we get to where the colonies area is located, and we're going to dump it onto that easement that we have. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that was kind of the next 2 years, this is what happens. But what that does is now the colony's developer is going to have to handle a pipeline, if you will, that can produce 80 million gallons an hour.
Oh, wow.
So
An hour. So we're talking, that's...
It's kind of like if a neighbor says, hey, do you mind if I drain my pool? And you think, oh, no problem, and
Yeah.
a little garden hose, and they show up with like a huge pump and a huge hose, and they're blowing
And
water
80
pipes.
million an hour.
Yeah.
That's
So
insane.
so colonies is kind of looking at us going, okay, how's this going to work? So they kind of math it out, and they go to the then D2 county supervisor, John Michaels, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but could be Mickles. And they say, hey, this probably isn't unfair. It's going to cost us 25 mil to go ahead and put the infrastructure in to handle that pipeline, if you will,
Right.
or that consequences of that. Let's split this. Let's split the development costs. Because, again, they have this agreement that, we're taking care of the first pond, but we're going to figure out what to do with the total solution. And the county does not respond positively. Basically, they told me to go ahead and pack sand. They were going to pay for it. So, in consequence, we run into what I would say is mistake number 2. That the developer, or the guy leading the development, he not underwrites, he donates to the county supervisor campaign, and he supports the opponent to Supervisor Mickles. Okay, and this is in the 2002 election. And Mickles has been in there for 16 years. They didn't have term limits at the moment, and he loses. So the perception,
Right.
What do you think the perception of that is?
That obviously there's some type of deal going on there, right? Like that. Well, he loses, but he was funded already, right?
Well, maybe I probably didn't explain very well. You have one supervisor that basically told the developer, no, we're not going to help you with that. We're not going to help fund that at all.
So he goes with the other
So he goes
supervisor,
with the other supervisor.
and funds him.
And
the other guy wasn't a supervisor. He goes find somebody. You may or may not have a relationship with them, and puts him up to run for supervisor against this guy, and puts a whole lot of money behind him, right?
No, that isn't really what the published report that I read didn't have that kind of detail. It was just he supervisor, he
well, beyond wasn't a supervisor before he ran for supervisor. That's
my point is based on the published report, all he does is support the opponent, and the opponent wins. And
so the opponent wins, so that creates for him to help him out with the issue.
Exactly. Going on down the road, the
Right.
perception is, I just helped a friend into this position.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it looks like he's buying someone who's agreeable to his
Right.
position.
And he didn't, or it's not illegal. What he did
Right.
is not illegal. He is, First Amendment free speech rights. You can support who you want, follow the California reporting rules, do all that. You're good to go. You can do that. But the perception,
Yeah.
and especially as you roll forward, and I'm gonna have to skip quite a bit of this, because over the next we're going to roll forward all the way to 2006. You're looking
Okay.
at me like no.
No, I just wanted to say, what happened after that? He wins,
Yeah.
and what's the outcome of that?
Okay.
Real quick, before we move
let's
forward.
not move forward too fast. So by doing that, he sent a message to all the other supervisors that you either get on board and you're working something out with us, or we can do the same thing to you. I mean, you want to get reelected, but we can put a whole lot of money against an opponent, and you're going to have to deal with that. So there's not only the results of that one election, but by doing that, you send a message.
Okay, so we roll forward, and it's kind of a back and forth in court. And in general, not every time, but in general, when it goes
The court basically says you can't put more water onto that property than what was going to go there before. Is that kind of what they came down on it?
basically they landed on Colony's wins because of exactly that. Yes, you have easements on it. The easements are still valid, but
they say the flood water can go on there, but you're putting more flood water.
Yeah, you've overblown your easement, so it's on you to fix this problem. So they finally get to that point in I think it's 2006. Yeah, 2006, and they sit down and they hammer out an agreement. And
who hammers out an agreement?
The board of supervisors approves by a 3-2 vote a $102 million settlement with Colony.
So this guy that the developer supported is the swing vote in getting some agreement done.
He is one of three people that one of three supervisors.
They commonly call that a swing vote.
Okay, well,
if he swings the other way, that deal don't get done.
Which one is the swing? Anyway, the three supervisors are Bill Postmus, Paul Bion, and I don't know if I'm pronounced that correctly, and Gary Ovitt. And I'll finish this off, and then we have to go to break. And this is when we run into a mistake that is made. It's completely legal. But
you're going to call it inflection point number 3, right?
Well, I'm actually going to call it 4 because we're going to get back to it later. But what happens is the developer, about 6-8 months after this settlement, he goes ahead and he chunks into 4 separate political action committee accounts $100,000. So $400,000, and all of these PACs go to support those 3 supervisors that voted yes.
Yes. But right there, still, he's not breaking any rules, though, right?
Nope,
because
that's completely legal.
I mean, that's legal. That's fair game.
It goes into a database the public can access. There's absolutely, there isn't a way really to.
Yeah, legal, but otherwise questionable is what I like to think of it as.
It's not. I mean, it's legal, and if you jump forward to 2010. Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, but the perception.
Right.
So what about if we cut into a break and then we come back to keep developing this story here on U-Turn Radio?
We'll be right back to U-Turn after this commercial break. Don't go away.
Support the San Bernardino City Mission. Your donations help feed the hungry, provide used clothing for low-income families, provide access to housing and rehabilitation for the homeless, and help all who come to them for help. The mission provides a personalized assistance program for homeless men and homeless women and children. They help get less fortunate off the streets, place them in safe shelters, and get them back on their feet. Last month, the community helped provide over 7,400 meals and provided nearly 2,000 pieces of clothing, as well as almost 180 hygiene kits, which were provided for the needy. San Bernardino City Mission goes above and beyond, though, providing personal counsel, prayer, and a devotion time to encourage those in need in their spiritual life. So listen up, everyone. For a donation of just $1.57, you can feed a hungry person right here in San Bernardino. $15.70 will feed 10 people, and $157 will feed 100 hurting men, women, and children. If you're interested in helping and want to know more additional information, you can go to sanbernardinocitymission.org or call 909-649-0011. 909-649-0011. The San Bernardino City Mission, feeding the hungry, helping the homeless. That number again, 909-649-0011. Or visit them online, sanbernardinocitymission.org.
Nothing you can do to ease your pain, and every day it's still the same. You get up in the morning, your bed it ain't too warm, and another man that you would line next to is gone. This is a hard luck town. There ain't a soul around to pick you up and give you a hand when you're feeling down. This is a hard luck town. They'll kick you when you're down. You better help yourself. There ain't nobody.
Tom, Nadia, and Eric are back with more only on the U-Turn Radio Show right here on KCAA.
Welcome back to U-Turn Radio. That was Hard Luck Town from the album Blue Skies and Red Wine. If you haven't heard their music, you should definitely check it out. There are local artists. I was going to say celebrities. They're celebrities too at this point. They've gone to Tennessee and people were asking for autographs out there. So I'll say celebrities from Wrightwood. You can listen.
For me, that makes them a celebrity.
Yeah, absolutely. You can listen to their music on mountainmusic.net. Great album. They're both songwriters and they really talk about their lives in this music. So I was listening to some stuff and I was like, oh, I'm actually learning some things on here too. Life experiences are amazing to me. But before the commercial break, we're definitely breaking down the timeline, and we're going to jump into the 2017 trial of what comes out of.
Yeah, out of that situation. And I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip a bunch of material on how this ended up in court. But the short version is that they were accused of felony bribery charges based on that donation.
Right.
Basically, the charge was, hey, those payments into the political action committees, those were not legal. Those were actually an agreement and effectively a bribe. So that was, if you will, kind of the crux of this case. So in 2010, then Jerry Brown was the district attorney of California, and he was running for governor, and Mike Ramos was the district attorney of San Bernardino. They had this joint news conference where, biggest corruption case in California ever, and we're taking it to court. Oh, by the way, they're both running for office at the moment. Mike Ramos for DA, Jerry Brown for governor. They're successful, by the way. Anyway, so we jump forward to 2017, and these four gentlemen are on trial, and they've been accused of felonies based on this action back in 2006, where they donated money. So there's a trial, starts beginning of January 2017. The prosecution goes first, 6 months of testimony.
Oh, wow.
There's, the poor jury has to sit there and listen to prosecution testimony for 6 months. And so now it's the defense's turn, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
Defense, day one, rests. They bring no witnesses. They were so confident that they had this case won that there was no reason to bring a witness up there to defend, because you never really know what's going to happen.
Right.
And it's like, man, if we got the slam down, if this is a slam dunk, we're not going to go any further. And the jury, they deliberate. I think it was like maybe 2 days, maybe not even that. I can't remember, but it's like innocent, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. And they had some interesting comments about
there was one guilty verdict, right?
Nope. There were 3 not guilties and 1 hung
Jury.
trial.
Okay,
Yeah, there was a hung jury. The fourth, Jim Irwin, was kind of a separate prosecution, if you will, but that was a hung jury, and they didn't retry because basically the witnesses in the thing had just fallen apart. And feel free to read that, but it's almost comical. But yeah, it all falls apart. So anyway, the status now is those defendants are now coming back and claiming against the county, which is understandable. The county rejects it, and now there's
it's understandable to you, Tom.
They're all suing the county. Well, if you read about it, it's understandable, but you could turn the other cheek, but that'd be a pretty hard blow. So anyway, all
you could realize that you started the whole thing by trying to wield influence to gain a financial advantage, and hopefully some other people can come to that conclusion before this is all done. And the county now, after handing over $102 million to some people who probably made a lot of money when they sold that thing to the 210 freeway to start with, and
there was
now
18
seem
mil
to
they
be
got out of that.
making a lot more by supporting people for office that'll give them more money. They want another $250 million right now. So before that happens, I hope some other people think that they might have a role in this as well.
Okay, I guess this is the argument part. One of the things is, they apparently the way this works is you got to present a claim to the county before you can sue them. And they presented a claim to the county. I think it was for like $42 million. If you kind of math that out, that's 2 lawyers all year, every year for the total time.
This was recently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like back in, I think it was late 2017 after the not guilty verdict. They come, each defendant comes separately to the county and say, hey, you owe me this.
So you're saying they're suing for attorney's fees?
Yeah.
And costs.
Stuff like that. Well, there's a claim process. You go to the county first and say, this is what it cost me to get tried by you, illegitimately. And then the county says, forget it, we're not paying that.
Right.
And then you go to court.
Mm-hmm.
They all go to court. So now, each, I don't remember what the number is, but I know it's an $80 million wrongful or malicious prosecution from the developer, Jeff Burham, and then the other 3, it's kind of the same idea, malicious prosecution, but a lesser amount. And the total, I think, is somewhere in the 200 million area. The point, nobody wins, right? The defendants haven't won because they've been in court forever. And been chucking money. The county doesn't win.
Citizens of San Bernardino County who are going to ultimately pay for this thing once, pay for it again. But we're not letting the court determine it alone, are we?
What do you mean?
What I mean is the same people who were able to replace Michaels with Beyond before, so that they got a third vote that got them a settlement in the first place, have gone back to the well and supported someone to run against Rutherford, kind of with the same playbook in play again, to try and get what is people are talking about, a $250 million settlement this time. And who consistently loses in this is the county, seeing their money, their dollars to run the county go off onto things like this that benefit a group of people who, you don't know the finances on the thing, may have been making money all along. I think they got a housing development done. They sold a bunch of land to the 210 freeway. They had an opportunity when they did that to, figure out what was going on with the water. And, then they went through some court things. They probably shouldn't have gone through those court things. But if they got a court action, they can take that court action against the county now. But they're not leaving it to just a court action. They're getting back into the political arena, and they supported somebody to replace Ramos, and they got that done. And they came close to replacing Rutherford, and that would have, in their opinion, given them the votes to get another settlement done in their favor. And also set a precedent that that's the way business is done around here. And I, for one, don't think
and that's actually
right.
a great segue, if you will, to the point of the show is, presumably anything they're doing, it's not illegal. Right?
Right.
But the perception, what's the perception? And so now we come to this state where, okay, what are we going to do about perception? How are we going to handle that? Are we going to put an ordinance or a law in place where we're going to try to regulate that issue? Or is there another way to take care of that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's been tried, and people talk a lot about the Citizens United case, but it's been tried from the standpoint of saying, hey, you people with a lot of money, you can't give a lot of money to politics. And the Supreme Court has said, no, that's a fundamental part of freedom of speech. If you don't like what's going on, you can put your money behind whoever you want and try and influence that. But I don't know that that's necessarily been approached from the side of the people that are in political office, saying that if you take the money, then you cannot vote, you cannot assist, you cannot take any action on behalf of those people that gave you the money that create the appearance of a conflict of interest. There's many professions that work under those same constraints, and I think that's where you could maybe get something that the citizens of San Bernardino got behind and said, we don't like this, this is what we want to do about it, and see if that would fly legally.
I think that kind of makes more sense because, I mean, if you have money, it's makes sense to say, well, my interest is to, fund this person because I believe in whatever it is that they're running for. But I think that the aftermath, like once you do that, it's all fair game to that supervisor to do what they feel is right without having that influence of the person that funded him. I think that would be a fair shot for the supervisor, maybe, because maybe the supervisor in the beginning had a different agenda, but from what I'm learning here is that if they're being funded, the agenda could change because obviously they're getting a lot of money.
And they want to get reelected to office, and it's when you talk about settlements of $100 million or $250 million, and we've talked previously on the show about the cost of an election. Last supervisory election for Rutherford's district, she was $250,000, and then largely funded by, I think, these same people. Her opponent was, $500,000 or something like that. So she was outspent, but still won. But the big point is it's a $500,000, $700,000 deal to get somebody elected as supervisor. And if you want a $250 or $100 million settlement, it makes absolute sense if this is legal to go spend that money. Spend 3 times $700,000, get the votes you need on a 5-person vote board, and get what you want, $100 or a $250 million settlement. The people are the ones losing on that, and I think it's incumbent on the people to take some steps to preclude that.
Okay, we're creeping up on the end of the hour, so let's go around the room here. How would you handle the issue of perception?
I think I agreed to kind of Eric's idea, and I think that if you're gonna be if you're a supervisor and somebody's funding you, they then have no interest or they shouldn't have any.
You shouldn't be able to work upon their behalf.
Right, like they shouldn't at all. Like you shouldn't even look at their agenda, kind of like just let them be. You just gave them money because, and that's it.
So
if they come up before a vote, you got to recuse yourself from the vote, just like you do on a corporate board. Yeah. And this is a regular occurrence in normal business.
That sounds fair.
Made its way into politics.
So give me a kind of an example of what that would look like. Let's say I'm in the D2 supervisor and I'm doing my daily job as supervisor.
Yeah, well, I think it might be similar to the system that judges use, because judges often, they're attorneys, they're supposed to be impartial, but they are politicians. They have to get elected a majority of the time, and they often elicit campaign donations. And if a case comes before them with someone that they've has donated to their campaign, they're supposed to recuse themselves. And, if they don't, essentially their lawyers are a little different because they're a very self-policing profession, but their reputation is probably in tatters. No one's going to trust them again. No one's going to think they're an impartial judge in any case. So I really think that there should be some kind of a system where, like Eric was saying, if someone has an interest from a donator, they basically just need to step out. They need to make it a 4-person vote. They shouldn't even be tied in there. They shouldn't be the swing.
Okay, so going back to the 2006 settlement, it was a 3-2 decision by the county supervisor. But I think Paul Bien was the District 2 guy that had been elected and had been supported by colonies. If it had been required for him to step out and say, colonies helped me in my election.
I got elected by these guys last time. I can't appear to be impartial in voting on this, so I recuse myself from the vote.
Yeah, and there should be some kind of public notice, too.
Okay.
Attention to it,
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, so this was probably a Board of Supervisors meeting, and the notes of the meeting basically say, supervisor being bailed on this. Because
supervisor blank steps out because he is clearly conflicted.
It's not bailed, it ain't stepping out. It's recusing yourself when you're conflicted. And it's a standard thing in any corporate board meeting that's following Robert's Rules of Order. It's following the normal ethics that are accepted within the business community.
I hear that music.
It's time to go. Thank you so much, Sean Wade, for being with us. And thank you to Pat Bell, for Director of Development for House of Ruth. This was U-Turn Radio.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3